Welcome. So let's get into the topic for today, which is injury prevention. And is it a real thing? So there's going to be some hot takes here, which already tells you what my beliefs are. Again, these are my beliefs, these are my thoughts, and I'm going to try to defend them and back them up here with this presentation. So my opinion is no. There is no such thing as injury prevention. I believe that the human body is far too complex an organism for us to think that we can actually prevent something from happening. There's too many different factors going on with regards to our movement, our stress levels, hydration, nutrition, all the other variables that go into play here for us to say that one exercise or one movement is going to prevent injuries. We can prevent running related injuries by not running, right? But if you're listening to this presentation, it's because you want to run, right? So if you want to prevent your running related injury, which is an injury that occurs during running, then just hang up the shoes. But most of us are willing to put that risk out there and say, nope, I'm going to take that risk because I really want to run, whether it's for just connection, social, or some performance based things that we're trying to push ourselves to achieve. Um, the greatest risk of you having a running related injury is a previous running related injury, which is why it's so important for us to address things early on, right? To work with younger athletes, to work with people early on in this injury cycle to kind of nip things before they get out of hand. Because if you have a running related injury, that sets you up and increases the factor of you having another one significantly. So preventing, avoiding the first one is your biggest asset in preventing injuries down the line, right? So, what causes injuries? A lot of us just think about things that are causing injuries being training errors or load capacity errors. So, we've made it an error, an issue. There's an issue with our training where we did something wrong that created an injury, and we have a load capacity limitation. So, a lot of these go hand in hand, but they can be slightly different at the end. So, let me talk to you about this. So, when we think about training errors, what do we think about? Well, we have a saying in the running PT world that 80% of runners run at 80% intensity 80% of the time, right? So if we want to take that even further with injuries, we'd say 80% of running related injuries are because of 80% of runners, yada, yada, yada. So basically what that says is that a lot of times people get hurt because they're doing too much, too quickly, too fast, right? They're building up too quickly. They're doing too much volume for what their capacity is at, and they're running too fast too often. So this is something that we can modify, which is the awesome piece. We'll talk a little bit more about consistency, intensity, and density down the line, but this is something that you have control over, which should give you confidence, right? You have the autonomy to make changes here. Another thing that creates the training errors is Strava, right? Strava and our Garmin connecting with the comparison with others that we utilize and thinking, oh, well, so and so ran, I'm going to use a 3 hour marathon, ran a 3 hour marathon. I want to run a 3 hour marathon. So if they're doing this, then I should be doing this. So I'm just going to copy their Strava, knowing that there are a ton of different ways to get to that 3 hour marathon goal. And the best way for you to do it is the way that's best for you, right? Not following this script that somebody else printed out for you, but listening to your body and using the tools that you have at place for your body, for your schedule, for your life. The beautiful thing here is, like I said, we control these variables, right? This is something that we can manage. We can see this in front of us, and we know that there was an error at play. The harder part is load capacity. So knowing your load capacity is challenging. And normally you don't know your load capacity until something breaks. So I like to think about load capacity like this scale here. And on one side you have your load tolerance, right? This is how much, this is your capacity, this is how much that you load you can tolerate. And on this other side is the load that you're putting on it. These teeter back and forth, right? We need to load the body up a lot, get that to drop, and then let it recover and go back and forth. The challenge is when we spend too much time in one category or the other, right? When we load too much too frequently, we have other stressors on our body from work, relationships, families, holidays, other things that are going on that we don't allow ourselves to recover, that we hang out in that loaded section for too much. That's too much beyond what our load tolerance and our load capacity is. That can create an injury. So what we need to do is we need to take off that load, let our cells recover, and then gradually add that load back on so that we can get more into that equilibrium. And then over time, we tilt that scale just a little bit to try to increase the load, let our body adapt to it so that our tolerance increases. Increase the load, let our body adapt so that tolerance increases. This is a great tool for us from a rehab standpoint, from a prevention standpoint, but it can also be a culprit in why we have a running related injury. Okay, so again, I do not believe in injury prevention with running related injuries. If you want to prevent one, stop running. But most of you want to run, right? We feel like we need to run. So what we can do is we can continue to quote unquote stack the deck in our favor, right? We can do all the things that we need to from a training standpoint, make sure that we're training smart, that our plan is sound and intelligent and works for you as an individual. And then we can respect our load capacity. When we start to have things that are getting a little irritating, a little painful, we can realize that our capacity is a little bit off. We can work on those limitations. We can back off on the amount of load to let our tolerance catch back up. But we need to make sure that we're doing the things that are smart for us to stack the deck in our favor. With injuries, I like to think of it like playing a game of war, right? I take a deck of cards and I'm flipping the top card over, and life is playing a card back at me. My deck can have different cards in it, right? It's not just a standard 52 card deck. I can stack the deck in my favor and try to get as many high cards in there as possible by doing the things we talked about, by listening to our bodies, by having good training, sound training, by doing our soft tissue, our mobility, our strength work, and being intelligent with our training. We can stack the deck in our favor. The challenge is if you've had an injury in the past, we talked earlier that that's the highest risk factor is having a previous running related injury. So if you have one of those, you already have some low cards thrown into that deck, and you can't get rid of those. So what we got to do is we got to make sure that we stack the deck so that when we're playing war, we have the greatest chance of success. But there's going to become a day where that previous injury is going to come forward, and if life throws a higher card at it that day, something might happen. That means you can do all the correct things, but every once in a while you're going to have life kind of kick you in the face. Knowing that this is the model that you want to utilize from a framework standpoint can help you understand that, can help you take a step back, set things back in order, and get back on the road as quickly as possible.